Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. I haven't finished building my Kobe Yamato kit, I've only got a Musashi. So for today's video, we've pulled out a couple of my old Forces of Valor models in 1/700 scale, because in today's video, we're gonna talk about the battles that Iowa-class battleships and Yamato-class battleships were in simultaneously. Everybody talks about the Battle of Leyte Gulf and how there was a chance that New Jersey and Yamato could have fought. Had Task Force 34 been left at the entrance to San Bernardino Strait, these two ships would have fought. But that is not the only battle where these two ships came close to engaging each other. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the three battles that Iowa-class battleships and Yamato-class battleships participated in, and how close they came in each of those battles to engaging each other. But first, here's a word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Raycon. Do you remember back to school shopping as a kid? New notebooks, new shoes, new routines? I might not be in school anymore, but I still love the feeling of starting fresh. This year we're calling it Back to Cool, because Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic are my must-have for getting back into a routine. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic are packed with upgrades. They've got active noise cancellation, multi-point connectivity, so that you can pair with two different devices at the same time, and a super comfortable ergonomic design that stays put no matter what you're doing. And the new colors are awesome. I picked blue because it's the same as the Battleship's Measure 21 and Measure 22 camouflage scheme. A couple of the features that I like about these are the battery life, the quick charge function using the case that they come in, and awareness mode, so that when I'm out walking trooper, I can still hear what's going on around me. And here's the kicker. Raycon quality rivals big premium audio brands, but at half of the price. Much like how an Iowa-class battleship has all the functionality of Yamato, but at 1/3 less displacement. Right now, I'm using them to listen to Japanese Destroyer Captain, one of my favorite memoirs from World War II. Remember to check out buyraycon.com/battleshipnj to get 20% off your next order. Yamato is commissioned in mid-December 1941, shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Iowa and New Jersey are commissioned in early to mid-1943, but these ships aren't ready yet right upon commissioning. Yamato's first battle, the first battle for a Yamato-class battleship, is not until June of '42, when she is the flagship of Admiral Yamamoto during the attack on Midway Island that ultimately is just a carrier battle and surface ships like Yamato never participate in. The Iowa-class battleships won't come onto the scene for a year and a half longer. It's not until February of 1944 that Iowa and New Jersey participate in their first battle, their first time in a war zone. And that is the attack on Truk Lagoon, Operation Hailstone, in which Iowa-class battleships fire on enemy warships for the only time in their entire career. Combined fleet is nowhere near Truk Lagoon. There wasn't really a chance that these two ships would fight during that engagement. However, by later in 1944, as the United States starts to punch into the Japanese defensive rings of islands, Yamato does come out to fight, the Iowa-class battleships come out to fight, and they just don't get the opportunity on several successive actions. The first battle that these two ships fight in is the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Yamato is in the escort group of one of the three Japanese carrier task forces. The United States also brings three carrier task forces to the battle, but interestingly, Admiral Spruance, a cruiser commander, not a carrier commander, a surface warfare guy, keeps his battleships in their own fourth task group. This is what Halsey should have done at Leyte Gulf, arguably. So, the fast battleships, they're actually doing a strategy that the Japanese had done off Guadalcanal, in that the battleship force was between the carrier force and the enemy, so that carrier aircraft would attack the battleship force and use a lot of their offensive power before they actually get to the carrier force. And it works for Spruance. Spruance ends up breaking up the first Japanese attack when they attack the battleship force instead of one of his 3 carrier task forces. The Japanese actually do the most damage during this initial attack. It's when they hit with the most mass and combat power. And they managed to damage the battleship South Dakota and do some other stuff, but not significantly. They killed 20 some odd sailors on South Dakota, but they didn't impact her combat ability at all. And the rest of the task force was perfectly fine, including New Jersey. And so that strategy ended up working. Ironically, the Japanese are using the old American strategy of keeping the battleships near the carriers. This is the reverse, the strategy that the US did during Guadalcanal, where battleships like South Dakota and North Carolina were able to absolutely decimate incoming Japanese air attacks as they attacked the carriers. The massive anti-aircraft batteries of these ships was able to put a hurting on them, with some claims as high as 20 Japanese aircraft taken out by the escorting American battleships. So the Japanese attempt this at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. It's interesting that they've both looked at the other guy's strategy, thought that's interesting, and implemented it into their own tactics. Now, obviously in a carrier battle, there isn't really a chance for these ships to engage each other. However, at the end of the first day of the fighting, the Japanese fleet had had several of its carriers destroyed. The American fleet had not, but some of the limited reports from some of their few surviving aircraft were saying that, oh yeah, the attacks were super effective. We destroyed tons of American ships. So the Japanese could very easily have pressed the attack and sent in surface ships. Alternatively, the Americans have just won a great victory, and they know they've won a great victory. They also know that it was an incomplete victory. In fact, Spruance will be heavily criticized, not even post-war. He will be heavily criticized by contemporaries that he should have pursued the Japanese more. And he even sends a radio message to the battleships under Admiral Lee saying, do you want to pursue the Japanese for a night action? And Admiral Lee says, no, I've got brand new battleships like Iowa and New Jersey. We're not trained for this. All of our battleships have been doing shore bombardment. We aren't really trained for surface action. The Japanese are deadly good at surface action. And I, Admiral Lee, have fought a surface battle with the Japanese. And man, it was a lot closer than the scoreboard makes it look. So we should not do that. And that kind of fits the Japanese strategy. The Japanese were always trying to keep the Americans at extreme long range. Their aircraft had longer range, and that was going to prevent the Americans from doing as much retaliatory damage. They are able to do a tremendous amount of damage to American air groups because they're at such a long range that by the time the Americans launch a strike and recover that strike, it's after dark. So a number, something like a quarter of the American aircraft end up being lost, ditching in the sea, ending up on the wrong carrier, things like that. Way more damage than was actually done by gunfighter and combat air patrol. So the Japanese, trying to keep this distance, withdraw at night. Lee chooses not to pursue with his separate battleship battle group, and so there never was the opportunity. But if either one of those admirals had decided that they wanted to seek a surface action, there was a chance that these two ships could have come across each other. Now, obviously, the much bigger chance is at Leyte Gulf. New Jersey is Admiral Halsey's flagship during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Yamato ends up being Admiral Kurita's flagship during the battle. He starts out on a cruiser. The cruiser gets sunk by submarines. He transfers onto Yamato before the actual fighting part of the battle happens. So these ships have a real chance of fighting during this battle. This is the one that most of you guys already know about, but Kurita and Center Force is trying to force the San Bernardino Strait. Air attacks on the Japanese force sink Musashi and force the Japanese to turn around. Halsey believes that this is them completely withdrawing, having been defeated by his carrier aircraft. And he takes his entire force after the northern force with the carriers, knowing that Spruance was criticized for not finishing off these carriers. However, he did have a formation which would have pulled the battleships away from escorting the carriers into their own battleship surface action group, Task Force 34, under Admiral Lee, just like Spruance had had at Philippine Sea. Now, Halsey's using them as escorts instead of having them broken out separately. And because of this, he runs the whole fleet as is north after those carriers after seeing the Japanese turn around, and misses the fact that the Japanese then do another 180 and turn back around, come through San Bernardino Strait, and attack 7th Fleet's escort carriers and destroyer escorts off the island of Samar. This was easily the closest that these battleships came to fighting each other, because both sides were seeking a surface engagement. The Japanese were trying to attack the Americans off of the Leyte invasion beaches. The Americans want this surface battle too. Halsey just thinks that he wants the surface battle with the carriers, not with the retreating Japanese battleships. Some of Halsey's ships do end up in a surface battle with the retreating enemy carriers. Some of Kincaid's 7th Fleet ships end up with a surface battle against Yamato, but poor New Jersey and her sister battleships end up participating in Bull's Run. They run north, and just when they're starting to get within range of the enemy carriers, they're turned around south and show up after the Japanese battleships have already left. So this was another opportunity for a surface engagement that was lost. The third and final battle in which these two ships both participated was Operation Ten Ichigo. The Japanese, it's often been referred to as kamikaze mission, the mission where Yamato and her escorting destroyers and cruiser come down to try and break the naval siege of Okinawa, to try and sink American warships, beat Yamato, use her as artillery, that sort of stuff, to prove that the Navy is still in this fight and is helping to defend the Japanese home islands. New Jersey is there. New Jersey is again escorting aircraft carriers, and that's actually what makes this engagement the least likely opportunity of these three battles that they all fought in for New Jersey to meet the enemy. You see, Spruance didn't ask to send his fast battleships, his most modern battleships, to go and intercept the Yamato group. It's really interesting. He keeps these as anti-aircraft escorts. The kamikaze threat is so real that he's keeping his heaviest anti-aircraft platforms around his aircraft carriers, his most vital assets. And so he actually chooses to send his shore bombardment forces to go and intercept Yamato instead. So instead of the fast battleships, he calls up Admiral Deo with the shore bombardment force, and he tells them to form them up in line of battle to go fight Yamato. So he was going to send ships like Maryland, Colorado, West Virginia, Tennessee, and some of the, I think it was Idaho and Pennsylvania, were going to go out to fight Yamato. This is interesting that they're primarily 14-inch gun ships. A few of them have 8 16-inch 45 caliber guns. These are all 19-teens and 20s era ships. Some of them, like West Virginia and Tennessee, have been rebuilt with the more modern fire control system after being lost at Pearl Harbor. But he's looking at sending these older ships instead of the newer ones, which he's keeping near the carriers. Now, he ends up not sending anybody at all, because while he's got these ships formed up, keep in mind Spruance is a surface admiral, a cruiser guy, while he's got these guys formed up and ready to go, they don't actually get within range of Yamato, because Admiral Mark Mitcher launches an airstrike, and the aircraft go after Yamato instead, and of course they're able to reach her and sink her long before she comes within gun range of the American battleships. So if these two battleships had gone head to head, which one do you think would have won? Which one would you have rather been on? My vote, of course, is for New Jersey. During World War II, she had 0 onboard combat fatalities, while Yamato had well over 2,000, somewhere around 2,500 combat fatalities on board during the war. So I like my odds with New Jersey a lot better. But what do you think? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, as well as a number of other businesses and private individuals. For today's video, we'd like to thank the folks at Raycon for sponsoring us. Remember to check out buyraycon.com/battleshipnj to get 20% off your next order. You can support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.